Hi, and welcome back to another episode of Free the Founder, where we explore successful founders and what really makes them tick, what makes them successful, and of course, handing some of those lessons to you, the listener. And today, I'm joined by a really special guest, Alex C. Barr. And Alex, you are an SEO expert, and we're going to talk about that today. Your upcoming, some of the trials that you experience that you now teach other SEO agency owners to fix with some of your unique, I would say, cowboy methods. And well, you're wearing the cowboy hat, and I know where you live is out there. So wrangling those problems up, tying them down, and really, Alex, you're known as a go-to. Like the way I met you, I had a client, and they were like, "Hey, we're talking to this guy. You gotta talk to him and consider him. He's just a genius." So really appreciate you taking a little bit of time today and sharing some of your secrets. And I can't wait to dig in. So Alex, how you doing today, man?
Doing pretty good, man. Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, and so I can't recall exactly. I know it's not Idaho, but I believe Montana is where you're based. Is that correct, or did I?
I was in Montana last week. I'm in Wyoming.
Got it. I knew it was one of those, sectional areas. And can you confirm
more
for
bison
me?
than people out here, so.
Yeah, more bison. Well, that was one question I was just going to start with. Do you own horses or any livestock? I have to know that because every time I've seen you, you've had that cowboy hat.
No, not currently. We we travel too much, so.
Got it. Yeah, hard to feed them. Went away. So, well, good. Well, look, I want to dig in, man, because honestly, I know the lives that you've changed, especially in the SEO, and you've even sent me some clients that I've gotten to talk to. It's just insane the stuff they say about you and how you've changed their trajectory in life. So I'm hoping we can dig in, get a little bit of that secret juice out. But first, right, it's critical, in my opinion, to know how you got to today, right? Without the context of your background and how you actually got here, I think we would suffer not knowing that. So can you tell us first, what was your early life like? Where'd you grow up? What was kind of the beginning like in your world?
So everybody prepare for a 180. I grew up a city kid in Colorado. So,
Really?
yeah. So just your typical everyday city kid growing up in the concrete jungle. My parents both worked at IBM, so I was one of the first households to get like DSL internet. My dad worked at a high security account, and so we got all the fancy stuff. And so I was building computers when I was in like middle school, and was just always really interested in it. And so that's how I kind of got my start. I got pushed forward with the whole internet thing back in my day. It was new. And yeah, started actually in graphic design originally. So started building logos for businesses and doing graphics for like signs and stuff like that. And turns out there was more demand for website graphics than there was for anything else at the higher dollar point. And so started learning how to, I'm really gonna age myself here. Back in before Dreamweaver was a thing, it was Front Page. So that's what I,
Really?
cut my
I did
teeth
not
on.
know that.
Yeah,
I did not know that. I remember in college they had a class and they taught you Dreamweaver, and it was a big deal WYSIWYG. So that was the first WYSIWYG?
Yeah, so Front Page is what I cut my teeth on, and then Dreamweaver was like an upgrade from there. Learning, HTML and CSS and everything, hand coding all of it. AI was not a thing back then. And
Yeah.
And so I started building websites for businesses and doing, custom graphics for them and everything else. And then I just kind of fell down the rabbit hole, honestly. So you start off with logos, then you go into websites, and then websites, you can't find them. So you start doing SEO, and then, you're like, okay, well, now that we're ranking and everything looks good, but we're not converting, let's do some CRO, let's build some funnels, let's check out the back end, let's do, email and nurture stuff, and then you get really deep into sales and you start running teams. And so I just kind of fell down that rabbit hole, and I built agencies along the way, sold quite a few agencies along the way as well, and it's been a fun ride. So
Yeah, well, and just to expand, like, what was your first, like, I feel like entrepreneurs are born, And there's always that first catalyst when you realize, well, I'm just going to go ask this guy and make him pay me and go build it. Like, was that in middle school when you were building computers and you kind of found the graphical design part? I mean, what was your first sale?
I had my first business before that. I actually did window washing. So I saw there was this huge opportunity in my local area to clean windows. I was like, that's a relatively easy job. And doesn't take a lot to start, and it's pretty low skill, but it pays well. And so what I ended up doing is, back again, date myself here, I got a VHS training tape on how to properly whip your wrist around and clean windows. And
really?
So, yeah, and then I just went door to door to businesses and to like residential areas that had a lot of money, right? They got a Mercedes or a fucking whatever in their driveway, and I'd ask them about their windows, because I was like, hey, look, I don't know last time you clean your windows, but I can go ahead and put you on a schedule. So I built up a whole little business there. Ended up running a couple of different crews. Got my first car specifically to carry ladders and like equipment and stuff around for the window washing business. Ended up selling it to a 40-year-old, which I thought was ancient at the time, right? And so yeah, that was my first business, was window washing.
Wow. Okay. And did you have to build a website for that business? And is that kind of the foray and how you got into, the digital world, or what was the transition?
Yeah. So I wasn't really into web design necessarily at that point, but I knew I needed like business cards, and I needed a logo, and I needed to look professional, right? Because nobody's going to hire some kid that just like, they're not going to take them seriously, and you're not going to get the price point that I wanted at the time, right? So I had to look professional, look like I was part of a bigger operation than I was. And so that's where I kind of like cut my teeth on, hey, this graphic stuff is kind of cool. And like when I put out my stuff, then other people were interested in it, and they're like, oh, well, can you do mine too? And that's kind of, like I said, I just kind of fell down that rabbit hole. So yeah, graphics are actually the first thing for print, not for web, is how I kind of cut my teeth on getting into this industry. So
Got it. Okay. No, that's interesting. I feel like a lot of digital agency owners at this stage, they all started in that, well, I built websites, right? Or some area of it. But it's interesting you took that extra step, graphical, right, after window washing, and then I'm sure that sets you up for success in building. Okay.
It made a really big difference in the CRO aspect of it later down the road, because I already knew about like color theory, and I knew about a bunch of other stuff. And when you look professional from the get, you have more authority than somebody that just throws up something, right? And so that actually was kind of a secret sauce for me accelerating as fast as I had. So.
Dude, that's what I love about you, and I know we're going to have more, but just those little genius insights. It's not even that big of an insight, but a lot of people will just jump ahead, right? Or they'll go right to MVP and not realize the theory of, I know I've heard Jay Abraham talk about, preeminence. And that's exactly what he says. You build that authority first, people take you more seriously, now you can charge more. And yeah, so we'll keep that in mind as we barrel towards this next phase. What was your first phase, like for SEO in particular now? And that's where I want to start zoning in, because I know that's where you are a top 1%er. What did you realize about SEO, and where in the process of upcoming did you realize, whoa, free leads, I can compound this? Or like, what was the story that led you to say, I got to focus here?
So I just sold my web design agency, and I was doing CRO stuff and whatnot, and kind of dip my toe into the advertising realm of things, and I was like, holy shit, this stuff is expensive, right? And I was like, there's got to be a better way. And that's when I kind of went down the what else is there out there, right? And SEO is the direction that I went in, specifically because I'm a little bit of a control freak, and I like to have everything a certain way. And so being able to control people's reputation and being able to control what links show and what links don't, making sure, hey, I want this page that I've set up for conversion to appear to this audience, was a really cool concept for me, where if I just do the work, then I can continue to get those same leads instead of renting them essentially with advertising. And so that's kind of what pushed me into SEO specifically, was because I'm like, hey, you do the work once and then you just maintain it, and you've got an endless flow of customers essentially. And the cool thing about that is from a business perspective, if you don't have new leads coming in, you're either growing or dying, right? And so that is very easily represented on what does your lead flow look like? Starving any business of lead flow, whether it's digital or offline or whatever, that's the death of a business. And so it was really cool because we're always, as marketers looking for like, hey, what is the like most vital thing in a business? And that to me really stood out as being like the most vital thing any business of any size would want, was to not only own their reputation, but then also be able to control their lead flow in an affordable manner. And so that's what dove me down the SEO rabbit hole.
Got it. Yeah. Well, that is really enticing. And like, before we move on to your story, Alex, also, can I ask you this question? I've been talking with you in the past and even now, I do know that about you. You are pretty much, this is the way. Like, if you know the way, you don't really take any BS. You're like, no, just do this. And I know that's a lot of your coaching and knocking that into people that, are trying to build their SEO agencies. So you give me Steve Jobs vibe.
It's just the KISS,
yeah.
Example, keep it simple, stupid. So it's like, all right, well, if you know what works the best and has the best outcomes, not only for you, but everybody on the other side of things, why would you go a different route, right?
Yep. So. Yeah. Have you ever been compared to Steve Jobs, or what famous entrepreneurs has anyone ever compared you to?
Not famous entrepreneurs.
Okay. Yeah.
I get country singers a lot.
Country singer, city boy from Colorado, moving to the country. Okay. Yeah, I see. Wait, do you sing? Do you?
No.
Okay.
Not
right.
well, at least. Depends.
Yeah,
on
I just
how much
wanted to
drink.
Covering all bases, man. Yeah, I could see you around a campfire, shredding a guitar. Well, okay. Well, that leads to this question, and then we'll keep moving on. Like, what's it like to work for you? Your team underneath you, honestly, with that rigid, and of course it's result oriented. But what is it like to work for Alex C. Barr?
So I like to think it's pretty great. So
yes.
The reality of it is I always look at it from the other side of the coin, right? And so if you're working for me, I want to look at your position. And I do a lot of this with, working with other agencies. A lot of owners don't look at the people that are working for them. They don't look at it from their position. And so that's something that I pride myself on is, hey, if you're going to come work for me or you're going to come work for an agency that I'm consulting, then you want your job, when you wake up in the morning, you want to know what you're doing, you want to be excited about doing it, and you want to see progress, right? And get paid fairly and be incentivized accordingly with things that align with that agency. And so if your team isn't being treated well and doesn't like showing up daily and doesn't like doing the work, then guess what? Everything else is going to suffer, right? So basically, if you take care of your people take care of your business is kind of the mantra that I like to focus. And the reality of it is those people need to follow processes. So those are your 3 P's: people, processes. So the reality of this whole situation is if you're too selfish, right, to be like, okay, well, I just want to look at it from a dollar perspective, or, I need sales, I need whatever. Everything that I do, I look at just because of my background, getting into code and websites and debugging and all that kind of stuff. I look at everything as a puzzle, right? I'm just like, okay, well, what are the ideal outcomes for everybody involved? And then what's the puzzle that gets us closest to that scenario, right? And so from a working for me or someone I consult perspective, we want to make sure at the core of it that the people that are working in the business and the business itself have aligned incentives. And that's probably the one thing that I see the most, is that the people, especially like you think about an hourly VA worker, right? What is their incentives being aligned with? To take as long as possible to do the job to get the most hours, right? Now, you as an agency owner, you're like, hey, I hired this guy because he's cheap and I think I can squeeze as much out of him as possible instead of hiring somebody that's more expensive, right? And so those incentives are not aligned. And so you see a lot of friction that's caused by the structure that you create. And so if you were to go ahead and change that structure to where, hey, that VA is now incentivized to go ahead and have, whatever the agency is aligned to do, right? Then you're off to the races. I was speaking with a gentleman last night who has an offshore team, right? And the whole thing with that offshore team is, hey, they're, they're kind of slipping up, right? They were great for a little while, and now they're kind of like starting to realize that they can start slacking, and they're starting to see that more and more. And he's like, man, I don't want to have to fire my whole team. I need to figure this out. And I was like, okay, well, if one person starts slacking and you make sure that everybody is affected by that, if the whole team doesn't, meet quota, then guess what? The whole team suffers. Guess what? Now they're going to self-regulate, right? Now your incentives are then aligned with what the agency wants. And he's like, that's so like simple, but it makes sense and it's effective. And so those are the kinds of things that I like to go ahead and put in place where, hey, now you're getting not only support from your team, you're also self-regulating as a team. That team environment benefits your work environment. It benefits the agency, like on and on. So like those are the kinds of situations that I like from like an operations perspective, to go ahead and implement to make sure that you do have a good work experience and that you are running an agency that, you're excited to work for.
That's beautiful, man. Yeah, and again, I know that's something that you're famous for, and I know that's something we actually talked about, in a previous conversation. So it's, I just know it works, man. I think that's sage. Yeah, and I have parts to add, but I'm going to refrain because I want to get back. I want to get back to your story. And specifically, you built an agency, your first SEO agency. If I researched correctly here, you built up to 400 clients, 400 plus clients you had under your belt. So obviously, operationally, you needed everyone incentivized and aligned to that end goal to be doing their roles. But in that explosive growth, it seemed like there was times, right, that things fell off the rails, and that's how you really had to learn your lessons through experience. I would love to hear what's your top two stories that you as an entrepreneur, just like others out there, the crazy nights or the crazy situation or the I'm screwed. I'm like, can you give us some stories from that time?
Yeah, I don't think it's like a safe way to do things to blow up that fast. It was definitely a roller coaster. I was sleeping about 4 hours a day. I would get a 2-hour nap in the morning, dealing with clients all day, and then deal with all the offshore, VAs and workers and everything at night. And so I, got a 2-hour nap in between each break. And so I did that for a little over a year, and it wears on you, man. And so I found a narcolepsy pill that I got prescribed and that helped me stay awake for like extended periods in order to do that kind of work. So yeah.
So you drug yourself to stay up longer?
Well, and then I got zinc poisoning during that time as well because I was consuming so many energy drinks on a daily basis. I actually put myself in the hospital. So it was kind of a nuts ride.
Did you work from the hospital bed even then?
I was just on my phone the entire time.
You're crazy, man.
It was nuts. So nothing was gonna stop me. So
was there a time though that you? Was there a time during that where you're like, I can't do this anymore? I mean, 2-4 hours a night, and taking, energy drinks and pills just to stay awake. Was there ever a time where you're like, I don't know if I can do it? Or were you just full on balls to the wall?
It's one of those kind of crazy situations where you've put so much time and effort. It's like the sunk fallacy cost, right? Where hey, I've got this thing rolling and I just got to keep it going. Right. And so you're kind of scared of everything falling apart if you stop. And so you just got to keep going at it. And that was one of the biggest things that I I had a partner and he ended up buying me out because we had different strategies on how to continue this thing. I was like, hey, I don't want to die at age 30. So this is not, I don't see this I don't foresee this going on long term. And so we got to restructure, slow down. And he didn't want to slow down. He just wanted to continue going. And so I was like, hey, pass the torch. Here you go. And I was like, I jumped off the train basically. But the caveat is looking back after, I sold, I was like, hey, on paper, everything was amazing. Right? Our numbers look good. We're growing fast. With every chart that you wanted to look at looked really cool. Our retention was decent. I would say it wasn't amazing. But because we were growing so fast, it almost didn't matter. Right? And so there's a lot of benefits to the agency looking back now. I was like, oh, hey, I could have made myself way happier and way easier if we just changed all these things. And so the reflection time is really what got me to where I am now and has allowed me to help so many agencies up to this point, because when you when you do things just the most non-repeatable, non-scalable way ever and at scale, right, just continued, you basically learn a life full of lessons in a very short period of time. And that's what I did. I just screwed everything up constantly and then adapted and changed and was like, oh, I've already tried those 10 things. I know those don't work. This other thing has to. And so by doing that repeatedly, I learned a lot of lessons really fast. And so by being able to reflect back and be like, hey, how could I have made this the best for the team, the best for myself, had the best quality of life, and actually made this like a sustainable long-term deal? That's how I kind of restructured everything that I do now. And that's why I have such a unique way of doing things, is because I don't sound like every other guru on YouTube or at a conference or whatever else, because a lot of them say all the same stuff, right? But I'm just like, no, I've done it that way, and here's all the issues, and here's why my solution solves those things. And so I would have never gotten that way if I hadn't done all the crazy stuff that I did do, and just basically failed forward. This is a really good book. And I basically took that and ran with it, failing forward, just like, all right, well, if I can screw everything up and learn what works, like, let's just do that. So.
Yeah. Wow. Well, and like, I think of the perspective of your partner. So if you were grinding the bone and pushing like that, obviously he wants to keep going because you were probably the one shouldering, doing the actual on the ground stuff. And you got the skill, you got the edge cases, you got the experience. So I'm curious, well, does that business still exist is a question in my mind. And okay. And
about 36 months after, 34 months, something like that, after he bought me out, like it got dissolved just because he wasn't able to keep up.
Yeah.
And the reality of it is I saw the writing on the wall and was like, okay, well, either I jump now or, it's all for naught.
Well, it's funny, man. I asked you the question earlier, what's it like to work for Alex C. Barr, right? And in that scenario, you were kind of the one working for the business, and you were you weren't working for that other partner, but essentially you were doing the work and being the mule, to keep our cowboy analogy intact here, right? So you have a unique perspective, and it makes sense that why you always try to align incentives towards an end goal in an organization, because that's the only way you were able to even make it through. And that's what was, in some ways, holding that whole business together.
Well, I had to figure out the role first and get that dialed in before I could teach it, because I wasn't smart enough to hire A players and bring in, outside experience. And so, and I think that's one fallacy of a lot of like new entrepreneurs, is they think they've got to know everything. And that was a fallacy that I fell into. So I had to go through every single role, get it all dialed in, and then hire and train for that role. And so because I did it that way, I had firsthand experience in all of those roles. And so I knew both sides of that coin, which actually became very beneficial later down the road. But if I were to do it again, I would definitely just hire A players that are smarter than me, and I'd probably learn even more doing it that way.
Yeah. Well, and I'm sure advising others to do it, that way. I think that was kind of our experience when we first met as well. You were pushing. Well, to extend on that, Alex, a question that also comes to mind. There has to have been, in your reflection period, some big grandiose aha moment. You're getting past the burnout, you're kind of just coming back, you got your cash, but also you're trying to just get your sense of not being so numb, not having to drink so many energy drinks and throwing those, that lifestyle away. What was the moment of aha? Was there like a moment? And you mentioned the A players, that may be it, but I'm curious if anything else comes to mind. You're like, that's my champion, mission or idea.
So I've got a son, and the aha moment was, talking about family. Family first is a big thing, right? So basically sitting down with him playing Legos, I was just like, man, I've been missing all of this entire time, and for what, right? And so that was kind of my aha moment. It's like, okay, I'm not doing that again. There's got to be a better way to do this and protect this sacred thing with family and time. spent. And so that was kind of where I was like, I gotta rework and like really like learn from all my lessons and, you know, get everything figured out. Because at that point, like I had exited for what I thought was like a good amount at the time, but looking back, like, you know, it's not enough to never work again. And so that realization came to me as well. And I was like, okay, so I'm gonna have to do something else, right, at some point. And I get bored easy. And so it's like I was already looking at like, okay, well, because you're used to being at that clip, so to go from like, you know, 100 miles an hour to 0 is very jarring. And so I was like, hey, if I'm gonna do this again, I need to do it smarter. I need to have this, you know, all figured out before I jump into it. And so that's kind of, I didn't go crazy hard into anything in particular. I was able to kind of dabble a little bit, and that's what money allowed, was, you know, get my feet wet in a bunch of different areas. And I had some success in quite a few of them, and some hard lessons in some others. I'm not a SaaS founder, is what I've learned. It might change with AI, the route AI is going, but I tell you what, like, you get a big head on you when you have a couple of exits under your belt, and you know, you're like, oh, I could jump into whatever. And, you know, I got my ass handed to me with software. So, I mean, definitely still always humbling experiences, right?
That's the only way we grow, right? I feel I'm a big believer in that. Failure is really the only way to learn. You don't have to get hit by a car to know what it feels like, but you probably won't jump in front of a car too often, right? Once you do get hit. I mean, and before we move on, because I really do want to get to, like, Alex, you're just full of genius advice. You really changed the lives of a lot of SEO agency owners. So I want to dig into some of your tips and tricks that maybe will help others get free. But I am interested. How many exits have you made? How many businesses or agencies have you sold?
Officially on the books, I've exited 5 successfully. I've had to dissolve 2, and I've had a bunch of failed startups. So
Yeah. Well, haven't we all? Yep. Yeah, incredible. So no wonder every time I talk to you, there's those little nuggets of black and white clarity that's like, okay.
That's what experience does to you, right? I mean, it's like, hey, this either didn't work or it did.
Yeah. Yep. Well, yeah. And the shortcuts that if you were a young person, right, and you could have asked an A-player consultant like yourself, like, what am I doing? Where's the clarity? I think that's always been the value I see that you're able to provide. So, I mean, let's get into that. You had some successes and then, a couple learning experiences, as we all do. But you ended up choosing this direction of advisor and consultant, right? So selling your experience, helping others get clarity. I know for you, knowing the type you are, the cowboy and the entrepreneur, well, I'm sure it won't be the last business you build and sell, right? So this is probably just one of the things of others. And like you said, especially the AI, you know, we'll have to talk about that on this call or another at some point, same wavelength. But tell me a little bit. You go into companies, what's the first things that you're looking for? And I'll just be very specific. You go into SEO agencies. Most SEO agencies run one way, right? One way that, you know, is more similar to how you used to do it in that first early period you spoke about. And you come in, you grab it, wrangle it, you know, slash it, and, you know, set them on the right course to run the way, like, as you say, agencies should be run, or it is a family show, so I'll refrain from the language that I know. But how do you unwind and untangle and set it? What's the first things you're looking for when you go into those agencies?
So, to be perfectly frank, I don't have issues with agencies that run on a retainer model.
Yeah.
So I help a lot of agencies that continue to run on a retainer model because they want to continue with that model. I have a different model that's not retainer based that I think works way better and solves a lot of the problems that the retainer model has. But that being said, like, when I walk into an agency, what I'm looking for more than anything is, hey, how do we retain customers longer, make sure that they're happy, make sure that they're actually getting an ROI, that the team is well trained, well supported, and everything from that perspective. And you really start with the basics, the foundation. Okay, well, what are our current bottlenecks? What key man risk do we have? Because key man risk, not only from an agency perspective with the founder, but also from people inside of departments, right? If you can separate that out, right? Are we dealing with like a unicorn situation? Are we dealing with, a tools and systems and processes issue? I mean, there's a lot of agencies, surprisingly, that aren't running out of like an ERP, or, maybe the only thing that they have is project management, and their, sales department isn't talking with their, with their fulfillment. And so like, there's a lot of like basics that you come in, and what I like to do, instead of just changing everything out of the gate, is I like to talk with different, team members. I like to look at the processes, look at their books, look at everything initially, and be like, okay, cool. Here's my list of things that stand out to me, but let's go ahead and dive a little deeper. Are those things issues because of something else that's underlying? And until you kind of get your hands dirty, you don't know. And so when you basically focus on the basics, and then go from like bottom up, basically from that perspective, I like to just reverse engineer it and be like, okay, well, in the existing model that you're in, if we were to just make some optimal tweaks, how awesome can we make it? And if the answer is, hey, we can go ahead and get exactly to where we want to be, great. If the answer is, we're still going to miss the mark, that's when we're like, okay, well, let's go ahead, and if we know we can't get to wherever our goal line is just by making tweaks in the existing situation, let's go ahead and start addressing, like changing some stuff, whether that's adding departments, changing out team members, process, procedure, software, whatever the case may be, or the model completely, right? It depends upon the agency and honestly what the founder's focus is, right? Because different founders have different goals, as you know. And so if your entire goal is lifestyle and not, revenue based, other agencies are like it's pure vanity. They just want to have the biggest number on the board, right? And so you look at those goals and reverse engineer from those and what kind of lifestyle they want. Some agency owners don't know what to do if they're not working 60 hours a week, right? And having the opportunity to work 60 hours on whatever you want and not being required to is a totally different story, right? So being able to kind of figure out, hey, let's make sure that your goal aligns with what we're building towards, because the worst case scenario, and I'm sure you've experienced this many times, is you walk in and you're like, hey, I got an awesome solution, but it totally builds something that the owner or founder doesn't want, right? And a lot of agencies end up doing that to themselves because they don't look at things by reverse engineering the goal that they want, right? Yeah. And so then they build an agency that they're unhappy with and they feel chained to, but they're the ones that built it. They built their own cage.
Well, in consulting too, as we share that piece in common, giving advice and helping advise and finding the facts and, helping them hit goals. It's a lot like counseling. I mean, I think I mentioned my background as a counselor. And counselors, they really heavily train you. Don't tell them what to do. Guide them to their own, end goal, right? And they have to know what they actually want. Otherwise, they will blame you for it and hate it. And what you said is totally right. I see a lot of agency founders that go from one program to the next, and they're trying to bolt on the easy system, but it doesn't fit what they actually want to live, what their actual goals. So they feel trapped, they feel mad. And man, I've seen some guys go through just mad cash, mad time, trying new models, new things, when really, it's not quite right. But the way you do it,
that's the whole thing, is everybody's looking for a silver bullet, right? But it's, the age-old saying, it's, 1,000 gold BBs is really what's going to get you there, right? So.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. It's kind of a loaded question for me to ask, saying, do you believe there is a silver bullet? But I think it's like, I think of microbes, or, what is it? Like bacteria gut, right? Like there's millions of them that kind of, have some sort of effect on somebody's behavior or output. And you never really know the complexity of which one will hit and react to what. That's an interesting field in science. And I think you're right. Bunch of BBs.
It's how you define success too, right? Because there's a ton of agencies out there that are super successful on paper, but they're, they're miserable as agency owners. There's a ton of agency owners that are happy as, a pig in shit, but guess what? Their agency looks like crap on paper. And so the reality of it is what goal are you going towards, right? There's plenty of agencies that have done stuff, and outside of agencies too, just business in general. There's a ton of successful businesses. So if you find a business or a founder that you're like, hey, I want that lifestyle, I want that kind of agency, I mean, you can just kind of reverse engineer that. Okay, well, are you willing to put in the work that they put in? Are you willing to live the kind of life that they're living before they built it, right? Because a lot of the mishaps that I see is, hey, you look at Alex Hormozi just had a giant book launch, right? And Alex Hormozi on track to be a billionaire. He lives a pretty relaxed freaking lifestyle. But you look at him building up to the point where he is now, you know, sleeping on gym floors and I mean just grinding like psychopath style, like making me look normal, which is saying something. I mean, a lot of people aren't willing to put that work in, right? And so you got to take the whole picture and evaluate from there.
Yeah, totally. What like in your experience of consulting and working with clients, what are some examples? Like, is there one that comes high to mind of a change you made? You know, you identified something and you knew their goal and a change you made, and they, you know, like what's some of your top case studies or your top one that come to mind?
It's one of those things where it's like there's always something with everyone, right? Where you're like, oh, hey, that one tweak made a really big difference. But it's always usually something small. Like it's no, like I ain't no genius, otherwise I wouldn't be doing this if that was the requirement, right? So it's always little things. And so like one of the caveats with one of the agencies that I consulted for last year, as an example, that made a really big difference in their business and helped them get to where they wanted to be from a revenue perspective was just asking for referrals. Like they weren't asking for referrals. So they only asked for referrals with people that were happy, right? After their year contract was up. I was like, okay, so why though? I'm like, I don't know, because we're at the end and so you get a referral to move on to the next. And I was like, okay, well, let's reverse engineer this and look back. From the customer's perspective or the client's perspective, when are you the happiest, right? Okay, well, once we, you know, hit certain milestones, do certain things and whatnot. It's like, okay. And are we limited to just asking for referrals once? Goodness. So now we're asking for referrals every time there's a positive milestone that we've completed. And that exponentially changed the trajectory of the business. And it's just simple stuff like that.
Got it. Yep. Okay. Well, it makes sense. I think I can relate. It is just, you know, you win by 1,000 little cuts, little micro optimizations. I was in a really bad habit early on in doing, you know, consulting because I never really, I akin it to walking in the desert. They're really thirsty. You give them the water. Okay, now I'm good. What's next, right? And you kind of forget about the successes. But those little wins, every time you just plug them in, you know, they make huge differences added up. Well, to the technical side quickly, again, because you are an SEO expert, you've done it, you've been in there getting your hands dirty. You've been called innovative as an SEO, you know, guru, you could say. What's like an SEO change? What's like a secret trick? Maybe it doesn't work now because it's so fast changing, but what's some trick that you found, implemented, and you know saw a lot of growth from?
So that's something that I actually steer away from, is trying to like hack the algo or like rely, because if you, from a business perspective strictly, if you rely on, hey, this current algo has this one loophole, and if we exploit that loophole, then we're going to get this huge gain. Like I used to do that back in the day, right? And the problem with that is as soon as the algo changes, everything you built's gone. And so it's a churn and burn kind of situation. And if you're not planning on being in agency life very long, then great, build it for the quarter, sell it, call it a day. Like I fully respect that. But if you're going to be in it long term or any decent period of time, then you have to look at the basics. And so I'm a big data nerd, and I know it doesn't look like it, but I refer everything back to data, right? And so reality of it is Google shows its hand by showing who's currently being rewarded for whatever SERP you're going after, right? So if you can reverse engineer exactly what the algo is rewarding currently, then you can go ahead and match or exceed that and also be rewarded. That's kind of like fundamentally the basis of how I do SEO. And when people do SEO, typically it's one of those like what's the donkey game? Like pin the tail on the donkey. It's usually what it ends up being, right? They're like, hey, if I send this magical link looking for all those silver bullets, right? If I write this perfect piece of content, if I do this one thing, then I'm gonna get that ranking. And so what I do is from an organizational perspective, again, removing key man risk, is I like to put all of my eggs in like the process basket, right? If I build a process that can go ahead and produce consistent results, I'll take that all day long over some amazing SEO, right? Because he gets hit by a bus and you're screwed. That process is IP that has real enterprise value, right? And so that process is what I like to put my faith in, if you will, and build that out. So I'm like, all right, so if we can reverse engineer what the algorithm's currently rewarding and meet or exceed that and get really granular, like perfect example for all the SEO nerds out there. A lot of people choose a database that they like to look at, right? SEMrush, Ahrefs, Majestic. Some people still use Moz, right? And the reality of it is you're basically choosing a camp, and hey, whatever from a data perspective, I'm only looking at that. And it's like, okay, well, if you step back and you're like, okay, but why don't you pull from all four? Combine that and then get a more broad picture, right? So that's kind of the approach that I take with SEO is, hey, let's go ahead and do way more work from a research perspective and have all of the data available, make the most educated, strategy from there, and then go ahead and when we implement, we already know, what we wouldn't have already known if we hadn't done that. So and kind of take it back to the whole, if you got 2 hours to chop down a tree and you spend the first hour and a half sharpening your axe, it's going to be easy. It's going to be light work, right? And so that's kind of my approach with SEO is I want the data and the processes to do all of the work, and then it's just a matter of fulfillment.
Yeah, it's so sometimes I imagine back if we were thrown, into like a World War II or World War I, those young boys in the trenches, and I think of they got to look up to an officer, and what you said kind of triggered in my mind, like, do you want the one that's just like, all right, go, no thought, or the one that took all that time to plan, and we're going to hit them this way, then that way, and we're going to try to do this, and at least maybe have a shot. Obviously, if you know anything, World War I, World War II, you probably didn't have much of a shot if you're on front lines, but yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Very robust, and that way the foundation is strong and it'll work with that research. I'll
throw a little secret sauce bit in there. When you do that, result is a huge amount of confidence, right? Because you know exactly what needs to be done and what doesn't need to be done, right? And so that confidence translates with your team, translates with your account managers, translates to the client, translates with what you're able to ask for that work too, because you're not guessing. So you're not coming from a place of lack, you're coming from a place of abundance, from not only data and knowledge, but also from like confidence that you're able to go ahead and perform this, right? So a lot of SEOs undercharge specifically because they're like, well, I think I can, but I'm not really sure, and I don't know if it's consistent, and like I'm just gonna try to get as much of their budget as possible. Like you're over here self-doubting, and a lot of those factors play in. Once you install a system or process that takes all of that off of your plate, you can be like, oh no, for sure, like we can definitely do this. You're going to close better is what I found. Your pricing is going to be higher. Your clients are going to be also better too, because now that you have this process in place, you're not going to deal with people that are like trying to like haggle and lowball you and all this stuff. You're like, no, it is what it is, like period in a story. And you can come from that place of confidence, and then you're not dealing with all these crap clients that a lot of agencies are saddled with because they're like, well, I'd rather have the revenue than not.
Yep.
So
yeah, it's a dangerous loop to be on.
Right.
Well, cool. Well, I'm glad we started tapping some of the secret sauce, because that's the good stuff and the fun stuff. And again, I know you probably have forgotten more than a lot of those out there know as far as what tricks. But I really like your answer about that strong firm foundation, starting where they are, and then building that plan that really, really lasts. Well, let me give you a few quick fire questions. These are a little maybe off the topic, but just more exploring Alex Barr, the city boy turned cowboy. In general, because we've heard a lot of stories Okay, so if you had to say it, what is your superpower? What is your 10 out of 10 skill that you were put on this earth that's just easy to you and hard to everybody else?
I don't know how to put it in words necessarily, but I'm really good at like looking at something, whether that be a business or a SERP or whatever else, and like reverse engineering what needs to be done to get the result that we're looking for. So like that reverse engineering bit is, and I'm not an engineer by any, stretch of the imagination. Don't pretend to be, but it's that like thinking backwards, I guess, would be my biggest skill, and it's the thing that I see a lot of agency owners and a lot of business owners that they don't do, right? Because they're on the opposite end of it. They just want to like press go and start, right? Which there's a lot of benefit to doing something is better than nothing typically, but I'm kind of on the opposite end where I'm like, hey, what's the point of starting if you don't have a direction to go in? And so I like to go ahead and be a lot more strategic. And I guess strategy would be if I had to give it a
strategy
word, that would be my superpower, if you will.
So back to the general, having you as a general would be a good thing, a very good thing. Building strategy ahead and reverse engineering. That's really interesting. Okay, well, next quick fire question. Let's say right now, snap of the fingers, you're put in front of a crowd of 1,000 and you've been pumped up as this, whatever, just they have expectations that you're going to deliver something. What message would you tell that crowd of 1,000, let's say agency owner? What is the, you got 30 seconds. What would you say? And you can think about it because I know I'm putting you on the spot here.
Yeah. Crowd of 1,000 agency owners specifically.
What message would you?
Topic or just in general?
No, they just hoist you on stage. Boom, you wake up and here you are. What message from your heart would you just want to deliver to them? What message would you tell them in a 30-second speech hoisted on a stage?
I would tell them that like the whole reason that you're building agency is in order to go ahead and help other people at the end of the day. And a lot of people get away from that, right? And so if you look at your clients, right, as the ideal kind of people that you want to hang out with and help, then that's going to change your perspective on what your ICP is. And so if you reverse engineer, what your dream life with your dream agency, that like if you died tomorrow, what was your legacy as an agency? Was I just helped a bunch of poor people try to make business, or is there specific types of people that you enjoy working with that you actually want to help and be known for helping, right? And then be able to work and help with those people. If you look at agency from that perspective and reverse engineer from there, that's going to drastically change your agency more than almost anything else.
Wow. Yeah, that is authentic. And you're right. Like when I go in my engagement, that really hits home for me because sometimes, like I might be foggy and I'm getting up to speed and all I do in my head is exactly that. I think, how do I get the result they want? And something happens where I'm just like, okay, I'm with them. Let's go. Right. So I think that message, a lot of people do lose it, but it ties into the same narrative of what you're saying. What's the end result? Where are we trying to go? And then that's that strategy minded portion. Amazing. Okay. Well, here's the next quick hitter. Alex C. Barr, what's your definition of freedom? How would you define freedom, a free life for yourself? What is your definition of being free?
So my definition of being free is being able to do what you want, when you want, with whom you want, how you want. I mean, that's really what it comes down to, right? So if you just have one type of freedom, if you have financial freedom but no time freedom, is that truly freedom, right? If you have geographical freedom but you're, financially not free, like, is that truly freedom, right? And so there's a lot of different ways to define freedom, but unless you have all of them, like, you truly don't have handcuffs on. And so that's true freedom for me.
Yep. Awesome, man. Yeah, that is, it's very simple but very sage, and I would say that's pretty much the leveling that we've been on this entire combo. Well, last question, and this one kind of ties into something you've done recently. You wrote a book, SEO Agency Framework. It basically goes over all the lessons, no BS, all the stuff you've done in your career, and passing it on to agency owners. And I saw it on Amazon. So if you're watching and you are interested in just, getting the rundown straight from Alex, you can go right in there and buy it. We should put the link below. But without giving away the whole book, without giving away the secrets, what's kind of the game-changing lesson you would say if somebody reads that they'll take away?
So it was a much longer book, but what I realized is most people don't read long books, and agency owners are busy, right? And not everybody's a reader. So it's a very short book. It's more of like a field notebook than anything else. And it's just a map on like, hey, here are the best ways to solve your most common issues from an agency perspective, and it kind of lays out my model in one go. And so the biggest thing that they're going to have if they read that book is a different perspective on how agency could be not retainer based, because a lot of people are scared of not having a retainer because you're losing that recurring income, right? But when you read the book, you're going to find out that, hey, I could actually have a way more income for way less stress if I don't have a retainer model. And so I lay out how that works out, because logistically, like, a lot of agencies have been sold that retainer recurring revenue is, that's the goal. And it causes a bunch of issues. And so I basically lay out all of my lessons for why to do it differently.
Yeah, well, I highly recommend it, right? Because Alex has been through the ringer. He's not just one that's, I learned some lesson, like literally done it many times, passes on that knowledge. Like Alex, you are just very authentic. I feel like I've known you forever, and I feel like that's probably pretty common with many. And yeah, it's just always a pleasure to learn. Every time I talk to you, I learn something new. Highly, highly recommend if you're an SEO agency and you're looking for just that tweak that puts you over the edge and lets you live the lifestyle you want. No one better than Alex. So reach out. His website, alexcbarr.com. And your Facebook profile's on there, your Instagram's on there. So highly, highly recommend. Alex, cannot thank you enough for taking time with us today. Really appreciate it. Hope you had somewhat of fun and meeting me and my family. It's always a blast, and we'll have to do it again as we go on. So again, out there, appreciate you watching. We'll see you on the next episode. Thanks for joining us. And once again, Alex, thank you. We'll see you very soon.